Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 107, coming at you on this beautiful Wednesday evening from the Valley. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your podcasts and videos on YouTube. And boy, do we have a show today. We have some fights that have been announced, the final quarterfinal for the Ultimate Fighter. We're previewing PFL Africa, recapping UFC Fight Night Nashville, and I am so excited for UFC 318 this Saturday. Max Holloway, Dustin the Diamond Poirier's retirement fight. Let's jump right into it. Some fights that have been announced. We have Rong Zhu taking on Austen Hubbard August 23rd. We have Claudio Puelles taking on Joaquim Silva September 13th. And then Du Ho Choi taking on Daniel Santos September 27th. Some solid scraps added this week. And then in bummer news, we have Movsar Evloev out of his fight against Aaron Pico. I don't know exactly the specifics. I do think it's via injury, which really makes things intriguing. You would think that Yair Rodriguez would potentially fight Volkanovski. Is Pico a guy now? Do they wait for Movsar to be healthy and potentially book him against Volkanovski? Who the hell knows? But this yesterday, we had the final quarterfinal in the Ultimate Fighter. We had DC's team getting some help with Yair Rodriguez in training camp. It was the final welterweight that was dominated by DC's team and sets us up for the semifinals. That's what I'm most excited about. In the flyweights, we have DC versus Chell. In the welterweight, there is one DC versus DC matchup. There's probably one flyweight and one welterweight fight that I'm super hyped about. In the flyweight, it's Imanol Rodriguez taking on number one seed Joseph Morales, who's a former UFC fighter. I mean, if you watch The Ultimate Fighter, obviously they break him down. But he had fought in the UFC back in 2017. He had 3 fights. He went 1-2, beating Roberto Sanchez, losing to Davison Figueiredo and Eric Shelton via split decision. He's since had 2 wins in Cage Warriors and a win in Uriah Faber's A1 Combat. So really excited for that matchup. And in the welterweight division, I feel like this one is guaranteed violence. We get Daniil Danchenko taking on Matt Dixon. So really excited to talk about the semifinals as those transpire. Elsewhere in MMA, we have PFL Africa. First real big promotion being done in Africa. There is a prelim card full of African fighters, some foreign fighters like the UK and elsewhere as well. But that will be happening on ESPN Plus at 11 a.m. Pacific, the main card. It's headlined by Johnny Eblin and Costello Van Steenis. I expect Johnny to handle work there. We have A-list on the women's side, Dakota Decheva taking on Samiko Inaba. I expect Dakota to have another vicious victory. And a pretty intriguing 2 bouts here. We get AJ McKee's return against Ahmed Magomedov. And then Corey Anderson taking on Denis Goltsov. I'm taking AJ McKee and Corey Anderson. I hope there's a little bit more striking, but I could easily see Johnny, AJ, and Corey grappling their way to victory. Dakota is guaranteed violence, though. You'll love to see it. But let's talk about what went down in Tennessee this past weekend. UFC Fight Night Nashville. I went 10-2 on my picks. I missed one prelim, missed one main card. It busted my parlays. I obviously didn't bet amazingly with such a good pick'em record. But overall for Bows and TKOs, I'm 646 wins, 325 losses, 9 no contests or draws. So close to doubling up those losses. Hopefully we can keep the streak going this weekend. On the year, I'm 162 wins, 84 losses, 2 no contests and draws. Very close to doubling up those losses as well. To recap this card, I do think the prelims obviously started off hot. There was a lot of finishes and a lot of violence early. The fans really started to load up come the main card. I don't feel like they were super early to the arena, but they were heavily involved. You know, you have Broadway, all the bars and live music. Probably hard to get pulled out. But I do think the main card delivered for the most part. I did think those few, the beginning fights on the main card would be sloppy. That was the case. But the highlight of this was the fun Black Beast moment in the main event to cap off the evening. I previewed it a 6 out of 10. I am recapping this a 6 out of 10 as well. Some good fights we did not break down. We had Fatima Klein with a round 3 knockout over Melissa Martinez. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Fatima. And then Mike Davis with a round 2 TKO over Mitch Ramirez in a dominant showcase. But we're going to kick this off in the prelims. We had Valter Walker with a round 1 submission via inverted heel hook over Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Valter. That's 3 heel hook submissions in a row and one of the fights that I got wrong. But man, what Valter has done on this winning streak with consecutive heel hooks is absolutely insane, especially in the heavyweight division. He blitzed at Kennedy and never let him get comfortable. He was able to get a takedown, and when Kennedy had built up his base, I don't know really what happened. It was like a weird, wild reverse scramble for a leg. Walker went straight for that leg, and it didn't last long before Kennedy was tapping, and it seemed like he needed an immediate tap because he is on a medical suspension for 8 months post this fight. Statistically, Kennedy didn't do anything. Valter only landed 4 total insignificant strikes with the takedown. He was 1 for 2. The submission attempt in 28 seconds of control time. So Valter extends his winning streak to 3. He's 3-1 in the UFC. And Kennedy ends his 2-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. He's 3-3 since 2023. Now 2-1 at heavyweight. So what's next for these gentlemen? Well, all I have to say is the heavyweight and light heavyweight divisions are in desperate need of something to tune into. And Valter might not be the most technical heavyweight with the striking, but he is must-see TV at this point. Let's book him and Tallison Teixeira. That is the fight to make. And for Kennedy, how about Muhammad Usman? Moving on, we had Eduardo Moura with a unanimous decision over Lauren Murphy. And, this fight was a dogfight, as Lauren's fights usually are. It was Lauren's final showdown before retirement. She announced this would be her retirement fight before. And we really have to give credit to Lauren, as she's been a pioneer for women's MMA and has really lived off her grappling skills. I loved her post-fight interview where she says, I want to thank myself for doing 4 or 5 things. I do think sometimes when we work so hard for something, we do have to give credit to ourselves. I think we forget that a little bit. It does go a long ways, so I really liked that moment. But Eduarda, man, she did a great job defending the grappling and actually had better luck offensively wrestling herself in this fight. And when the fight was standing, Moura just had more energy throughout the fight, threw some more volume than Lauren, and that wore on both women throughout the fight. I would say they were both pretty gassed by round 3, but you could really see it in Lauren. Who's quite older. She had 5 takedown attempts in the 3rd and final round, didn't have a lot of luck, and that's pretty defeating. Moura, though, she is a well-rounded fighter. She's 31 years old. Her time is now. I want to see her against the top competition in the flyweight division. Statistically, Lauren landed 67 total strikes, 38 of them significant. She had 2 takedowns in 9 attempts, so not a great night with the offensive grappling. 2 submission attempts in 1 minute and 3 seconds of control time. And Eduarda landed 74 total strikes, 64 of them significant. So although she only had 7 more landed, she almost doubled the significant strike output. She was 2 for 3 in takedowns and had 3 minutes and 2 seconds of control time. So Eduarda extends her winning streak to 2. She is 4-1 in the UFC. She enters the rankings at number 15. And Lauren finishes her career on a 2-fight losing streak. She was 2-3 since 2021. So obviously Lauren's retired, but I would love to see Eduarda take on Casey O'Neill. I do believe she needs to fight damn near the top 10. I do think she's talented enough. And at already 31 years old, let's throw her into the mix. Moving on, a little underdog love that I got. Jake Matthews with a round 1 submission via rear naked choke over Chidi and Njokuani. And I figured we'd see some grappling from Jake to open up this fight, for him to be able to try to close distance against a longer striker. But I did not expect him to be able to get Chidi's back so easily and get a quick finish. Chidi came out very aggressive with some very powerful, big, high kicks. That definitely kept Jake at distance. But when he got Njokuani down, he brilliantly took his back. That was it. Clean finish. Beautiful performance as Jake. I had previewed this card saying I think this could be kind of a coming out moment for Jake as he's entering his prime, and that's exactly what transpired. Statistically, Jake landed 5 total strikes, 3 of them significant with a takedown and a submission attempt, and Chidi landed 5 total insignificant strikes. So what's next? Well, how about Jake Matthews and Vicente Luque? That would be very fun. And for Chidi, he could fight with Nicholas Dalby, a little veteran-on-veteran scrap. Moving on, we had Chris Curtis with a split decision victory over Max Griffin. In round 1, Max did a very good job circling and staying out of range of Chris's boxing. You know, Chris barely was able to get his offense going because Max was really bobbing and weaving and moving the entire round. There was a pretty bad accidental clash of heads that happened and cut Chris's eye, which always seems to happen for Chris, especially when it's orthodox versus normal. But round 2, Max started to slow down, and Chris was able to cut his angles in the octagon. And when he let off some of his combos, he was landing some big shots with some serious damage. But then it was going into a winner-takes-all third, and Max continued to slow. You know, he did land some strikes, but Chris has definitely had more power behind them, and he did land more damage. Rounds 2 and 3 were very close rounds, but Chris took them from landing more precise, powerful, and clean punches because he does have that Chris boxing. And a lot of what Max threw was blocked from Chris. But this is a massive return win for Chris. It really puts Max in a tough spot as he's nearing 40 years old. But I do think Action Man Chris Curtis belongs in the welterweight division. And he went on Ariel Helwani's show this week saying that he wants to stay in that division. And now that he's got the money for nutrition, getting the right diet, the weight cut wasn't as bad. Statistically, Max landed 63 total strikes, 59 of them significant. He had 1 minute and 3 seconds of control time. And Chris landed 71 total strikes, 64 of them significant, and was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. So as close as the rounds were, the stats speak for that. Chris landing 8 more total strikes, 5 more of them significant. So now Chris ends his 2-fight winning streak. He ends his 2-fight losing streak and starts a new winning streak. He's 2-3-1 since 2023. And Max extends his losing streak to 2. He is 1-3 since 2023. So what's next? Well, I think Max and Carlston Harris would be a fun fight. And again, I'm assuming Chris will be booked at welterweight. So after that matchup, I would like to see him take on Mike Malott. I think that's a fantastic striking showdown. Moving into the main card, we had Tuco Tokkos with a round 2 submission via arm triangle choke over Junior Tafa. And I expected this to be an ugly, not very clean technical fight. And that's exactly what happened here. But Tuco took the advantage by exhausting Junior and easily getting a choke in the second round. You know, Junior looked in pretty good shape moving down to light heavyweight. He was quick when he let some combos go, but started getting overzealous, and Tuco went for a takedown immediately. And the rest of the round, he just laid on him and wasn't very offensively moving or looking for submissions. I try to never talk shit on UFC fighters. You know, this is the best promotion in the world. But sheesh, this was ugly. I mean, Junior in the second round didn't even try to get up when he was taken down. He wasn't building a base. He wasn't trying to get closer to the cage. And Tuco had pretty terrible form on top. He was literally just like chest leaning on Junior, not looking to get better positions. He had Junior kind of down on his hip. He could have easily just done a half Nelson, put him down, looked to be offensive with his jiu-jitsu, but none of those really happened, and Tafa kind of just accepted the position. And Tuco, just from laying on Junior, was able to basically fall into an arm triangle, but he easily could have had his back either way. It didn't seem like he was looking for that. Up against the cage, he could have easily put in some hooks and got his back again, but he just laid on Tafa. He got the submission. He got the win. Statistically, Junior only landed 25 total strikes, 24 of them significant with a reversal. And the reversal was just from sloppy form from Tuco. But Tuco landed 31 total strikes, 11 of them significant. He was 5 of 9 in takedown attempts, a submission attempt, and 7 minutes and 51 seconds of control time. So Tuco earns his first win in the UFC. He's 1-2 in the UFC now. Junior starts a new losing streak. He's 2-4 in the UFC and 0-1 at light heavyweight. So what's next? Again, I personally don't believe or think that either of these men are UFC quality, but the light heavyweight division needs all the bodies it could get. So I'm going to book Junior against Bruno Lopez, and for Tuco, he could fight Ivan Erslan. Moving on, another fighter in a new division. We had Vitor Petrino with a round 1 submission via rear naked choke over Austen Lane. And in this fight, I wasn't sure if Vitor would just be able to steamroll Austen because of the natural size difference. Lane's a big heavyweight. But Petrino got his first takedown, and Austen didn't have a chance to get anything going because he transitioned to his back quick, and then the tap came shortly after. Statistically, Vitor landed 17 total strikes, 3 of them significant. He had a takedown, 2 submission attempts, and 3 minutes and 3 seconds of control time. And Austen landed 3 total and significant strikes. So Austen extends his losing streak to 2. He's 1-4-1 since 2023. And Vitor ends his 2-fight losing streak, starts a new winning streak, his first fight and win at heavyweight. He's 5-2 since 2023. So what's next for these boys? Well, I really doubt that we're going to see Austen Lane in the UFC again. He's almost 38 years old. So I'm going to say for Vitor, a matchup with Rizvan Kuniev is the one to make. And I said it last week. It looks like Vitor is going to probably stay at heavyweight. He really looked to bulk up. But I think his career would be better off at light heavyweight. I'm not too sure how hard his weight cuts were. But if he struggles in the heavyweight division, he's still young enough he could go back down. Then the fun began. We had Morgan Charriere with a round 3 TKO over Nate Landwehr. Fight of the night, 50 G's. And this was my front runner for fight of the night on this card. It was exactly that, and it delivered. A Nate the Train fight, you always know it's going to go down. Now, Morgan was looking great attacking Nate at distance early, and he was landing some nice leg kicks, which was a great idea with the wide stance. I actually said coming in, I think Nate should try to land some low kicks for how wide Morgan's stance is as well. But then, the fight was pretty tactical and measured. Morgan did mix in grappling to still round 1. Nate had some good flurries, but Morgan was definitely in control of the fight. Round 2, Nate just said, fuck it. He started throwing things from all angles, all over the place, and he didn't let Morgan be the man pressuring forward like he did in the first round. Both men landed a ton of strikes. It quickly turned into a bar fight, which typically favors Nate. Then going into a winner-takes-all third, you'd expect Nate to come out hot again, but it was Morgan who went for broke and puts Nate's lights out with a beautiful knockout. It got the Nashville crowd going absolutely bonkers. I was loving it. But man, Morgan is continually adding to his game. I do think he could be a problem in the featherweight division, especially if he continues to leverage the leg kicks and grappling. But it's a brutal loss for Nate at this point in his career. Nate has his hype train. He will be a fan favorite regardless, and I expect him to have some big fights. Statistically, Nate landed 65 total strikes, 63 of them significant. And Morgan landed 67 total and significant strikes. He had 2 takedowns and 5 attempts, a knockdown, and 1 minute and 3 seconds of control time. So Morgan starts a new winning streak. He's 3-2 in the UFC. Nate extends his losing streak to 2. He is 2-3 since 2023. So where do these barn burners go next? I would love to see Morgan and Hyder Emil. I think that's a box office matchup. And Nate, he could take on Kyle Nelson. Moving on, we had Steve Garcia with a unanimous decision over Calvin Kattar. And as I mentioned in the preview, Calvin just hasn't looked like himself and hasn't shown that he's had any confidence since the Max Holloway fight. I mean, Steve was basically sparring Kattar, as the only round he threw more than 10 strikes was 13 thrown in round 3. Come to find out, he had posted on Twitter that he broke his foot in 2 places in the first round, so that could definitely be a part of it. That's part of fighting. But we didn't see any takedown attempts from either man in this fight either, and it didn't matter. I mean, I would have liked to actually see Steve be more aggressive and look to get a finish in this fight, as he had Calvin rocked a few times, especially in the 3rd round. But this was a brilliant performance by Steve. He has to be feeling himself in the middle of his prime, now fighting up by the top 10. I do think Calvin should retire. He didn't show any fire inside of him, being down in the fight and looking to even try to win the fight after the first round and a half had not gone his way. But Steve is good, but I do think a lot of this result is on Calvin Kattar, in my opinion. Statistically, Calvin only landed 26 total insignificant strikes. Steve landed 85 total insignificant with the knockdown. So Calvin now has that losing streak to 5. He hasn't won since January of 2022. He moves down 1 spot in the rankings to number 15. And Steve extends his winning streak to 6, 5-0 since 2023. And he enters the featherweight rankings at number 11. So what's next? Again, I don't think we'll see Calvin in the UFC again. And I'd love to see Steve and Josh Emmett. That's an absolute banger to make. So let's book it. Then in the co-main event, we had Gabriel Bonfim with a split decision victory over Stephen Thompson. And as expected, this really was grappler versus striker. Gabriel was going to try and take Stephen down, and he was successful in doing so in round 1. Although it took until about 2 minutes left in the round to do so. Gabriel was very active, chopping Wonderboy's lead leg, which was great. And Stephen did a good job getting back up when taken down and not accepting the positions to be submitted. Well, round 2, Stephen was able to defend the takedowns, and Gabriel seemed to be slowing and tiring. But Stephen was landing good shots and combos, and Gabriel had Stephen's lead leg beaten bad and actually split his shin on a check kick that had it split open and bloodied. It was pretty gruesome. But he kept throwing it anyways and landed a massive head kick at the end of the round. So it seemed like the tables were turned. It was 1-1 going into round 3. So in a winner-takes-all 3rd round, which was a very hard round to score, and honestly could have gone either way. I watched it back a few times. Gabriel only got 2 takedowns in 6 attempts in the round, but landed some good shots. Stephen landed a little bit higher volume, but they weren't very significant or precise strikes. He missed on a lot of them. Gabriel getting the takedown at the end of the round seemed to seal the fight. You know, a win here could have set Wonderboy for a great finish to his career, but now Gabriel gets his shot versus the top of a very good and hard-hitting welterweight division. I know that the decision was controversial, but I think they did make the right decision. But the massive head kick he landed with 2 minutes to go, right on the money with the split leg, is pretty incredible by both men. The fact that Stephen was throwing the kick and basically it landed clean and Gabriel just kind of stunted like this and came back and was throwing. I mean, wow. He acted like nothing had happened. I have no idea how Bonfim ate that kick, and neither did Wonderboy. You could see it on his face, but he was taken down right away after that. Bonfim had like 3 minutes of control time. He was landing some knees in the clinch at the start of the round, but neither man did much with about a minute left in the fight. You could say, well, hey, the number 1 scoring criteria is damage, and Stephen landed the biggest, most impactful strike in round 3 with that head kick. And I won't debate that. But what's more, what holds more ground in a full round of scoring? Takedown attempts, 3 minutes of control time, some knees to the clinch, Or is it one strike with a bunch of missed strikes? I have to score that to Bonfim. I'm an OG UFC fan. This is mixed martial arts. I just don't think Wonderboy did enough. He kind of accepted being clinched up against the cage with a minute to go. He could have shucked Gabriel off and really went for it with some of his attacks, and he didn't do that either. You know, he's 2 years old. I'm sure he was tired. You could see him take some big breaths with about 30 seconds left. And Gabriel did not do too much. He was just trying to coast to the scorecards, which could have cost him. But I'm not super upset about the decision. I know Wonderboy went on the Ariel Helwani show and was pretty upset about it. But if you want to win the fight, you can't let it go to the scorecards, and you have to show more fire at the end of the fight. Statistically, Steven landed 78 total strikes, 42 of them significant. He had a reversal and was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. Gabriel landed 55 total, 40 of them significant. He had 5 takedowns and 14 attempts, so you have to credit Wonderboy there, and 5 minutes and 29 seconds of control time. A lot of the strikes landed by Steven were in round 2, but he did have 23 more total strikes and 2 more significant in the fight. But Steven now extends his losing streak to 3. He's 1-3 since 2022. He exits the top 15. And Gabriel extends his winning streak to 3. He's 5-1 in the UFC and enters the top 15 at number 14. So what's next? Well, it sounds like Steven had 2 fights left on his contract, so he may have 1 or 2 more fights. For me, it has to be a fight with Michael Venom Page, but it probably won't be because they're friends. So how about a striking affair with Randy Brown? And for Gabriel, he could fight the winner of the Kevin Holland, Daniel Rodriguez fight this weekend. But if not, I'll say Gilbert Burns. Moving on to the main event. We had Derrick Lewis with a round 1 TKO over Tallison Teixeira. And this fight, as you expected, started very offensively. And it was kind of a weird situation because Derrick acted like he was poked in the eye. He was kind of slapping his eye and just throwing some stuff out there. But the ref did not stop the fight. And he just started throwing absolute bombs after Tallison came in range. He landed one that sat Tallison right on his ass. And Lewis, typical Black Beast style, pounced on him with some big ground and pound. And Tallison was able to get up, but he very illegally grabbed the cage like 3 or 4 times to do so. I do think this was an early stoppage. He clearly was capable getting back up. I do think the Black Beast would have got the finish anyways. And I wish we got to see it go longer. But hey, the headline here is another Black Beast knockout. He extends the knockout records that he has in the UFC. We got an awesome moment on the mic. He took his shorts off. He celebrated. And in his post-fight interview, they said, "What's next for you?" He said, "What's up next is my wife. I've been out for 2 weeks. I'm going to put some ground and pound down." You got to love the guy. That's why he main events, and I'm here to see it over and over again. Statistically, Derrick landed only 10 total and 9 significant strikes with the knockdown, and Tallison landed 3 total and significant strikes. So Derrick extends his winning streak to 2. He's 3-2 since 2023 and stays at number 9 in the rankings, while Tallison suffers his first professional loss and ends his 8-fight winning streak. He's now 2-1 in the UFC and moves down 1 spot in the rankings to number 14. So what's next? Well, I think we booked Tallison and Mick Parkin, but for Derrick, it's definitely a difficult choice. I just say we got to give him more highlight opportunities, some fan favorite matchups, and the one to make is a rematch against Tai Tuivasa. I know he's already beaten him, but let's make it happen. But yeah, UFC Nashville, lots of finishes early. I really enjoyed Valter Walker, Jake Matthews with the beautiful performance, Action Man back at welterweight. The start of the main card was pretty sloppy, but the fight of the night, The Last Pirate and Nate the Train was box office. Steve Garcia put on a show. A very hard-fought battle between Bonfim and Wonderboy, and then the Derrick Lewis stamp on the evening. But that sets us up this weekend, another pay-per-view card, UFC 318. The early prelims at 3:15 Pacific, the prelims at 5 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. And to preview this card, you know, the early prelims and prelims aren't super deep. but they have some great matchmaking and stylistic showdowns, including the final 2 prelim fights I'm really excited about. The main card, in my opinion, is box office, as we're going to see a ton of boxing and kickboxing, some violent matchups destined for must-see finishes. New Orleans is about to have a treat. I am previewing this card an 8 out of 10. The main event alone is a top 10 fight the UFC could make right now, in my opinion. So New Orleans better show up and show out. It's the retirement fight of the Diamond. Lil Wayne's walking him out. The scene that's going to happen is going to be awesome. I am hyped for this fight, and I will not take any slander on this pay-per-view. I have seen a lot of things on social media, especially Twitter, of how terrible of a pay-per-view this is, and it should be a fight night card. I'm telling you right now, the matchmaking early, the main card, it'll be fucking delivered. I'm previewing it at 8 out of 10. I do think it will deliver at least a 7 or 8 out of 10, so I'm not taking any slander. A good fight we will not break down. We get Bruno Fajeda taking on LFA alum Jackson McVeigh. Bruno was supposed to originally fight Ikram Aliskerov. I was super excited for that fight, but I think Bruno handles business here. That's why we are not breaking it down. So let's start in the early prelims. We have Ryan Superman Spann, 33 years old with a 22-11 record, taking on Lukasz the Bull Brzeski, 33 years old with a 9-6-1 record. So here we get 2 heavyweights in the middle of their primes that are looking for a quality win to keep their UFC roster spot alive and be prevalent while the times are still good in their youth in fighting. Breaking this down, Ryan trains out of Fortis MMA. He has a blue belt in BJJ. He's a Fury FC, Legacy FC, LFA, and Contender Series 2-time alum. He recently moved from the light heavyweight division to the heavyweight division. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 1-4 since 2023. 13 of his 22 wins are via submission, 6 via knockout, so 19 of his 22 wins via finish. And 5 of his 11 losses are via knockout. Now, Lukasz is a Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's 1-4 since 2023. 5 of his 9 wins are via knockout. 4 of his 6 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. I mean, it's a heavyweight fight. This is going to be a slow and powerful back and forth tit for tat battle. I don't think it will go to a decision, but if it does go late, I do think the pendulum will swing to Lucas's favor. I do expect him to have more in the tank, but I do think Ryan is more powerful, has more ways to win with his good submission ability. For that reason, I'm taking Ryan Spann. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, we have Jimmy the Brute Crute, 29 years old with a 12-4-2 record, taking on Marcin Prachnio, 37 years old with a 17-8 record. Now, although there's a big age difference, these men have pretty similar pro experience with the volume of fights, but Jimmy just now is hitting his prime window, and Marcin is a young 36, so not too old, or a young 37, so he's not too old, but besides his win against Khalil Roundtree Jr. in 2021, he is seeking his first quality win in the UFC. Jimmy's had some tough luck. He's had 2 draws in 2 years and some losses. He's going to come out in desperation mode in this fight, in my opinion, which should make for a fantastic fight. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he fights another split decision, but I'm not betting on that. Breaking it down, Jimmy has an orthodox stance. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's a Contender Series alum. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. He has 2 draws and is 2-3-2 since 2020. 5 of his 12 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission, so 9 of his 12 wins are via finish. 2 of his 4 losses are via knockout, 2 via submission, so all 4 of his losses are via finish. Now, Marcin has a Kyokushin karate style. He's got a black belt in Kyokushin and a blue belt in BJJ. He's a 1 alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-2 since 2023. 11 of his 17 wins are via knockout. 4 of his 8 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now this could be a clash of styles showdown, as Jimmy looks to take Marcin down and control him, but he has to be more offensive. He's done that, taken guys down and just laid on them, and it has led to draws. Marcin doesn't have great takedown defense, but he does have good kickboxing. So it could be a very measured kickboxing fight, but I have to favor the younger fighter who has to win this fight to stay in the UFC. I think he has more ways to win as well. For that reason, I'm taking Jimmy Crute. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We got Islam the Ripper Dulatov, 26 years old with an 11-1 record, taking on Adam Fugit, 36 years old with a 10-4 record. Now this is an interesting fight, as Adam is actually a very solid fighter. He seems to be fighting his best right now and is in his prime. He's just fought very stiff competition. This is Islam's UFC debut, but he seems like a deadly striker who is coming off a beautiful knockout in his Contender Series bout. Breaking this down, Islam is a Brave, Octagon, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 10-fight winning streak, 4-0 since 2023. 7 of his 11 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission, so all of his 11 wins have come via finish. Now, Adam trains out of Art of War. He's an LFA alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 5 of his 10 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 4 losses are also via knockout. So again, to knock out or be knocked out. Now this is going to be a fun striking matchup, but I do think Islam has more power and speed, and he doesn't typically look for takedowns, but if Islam is pressuring him, he's going to have to find a way to look to clinch or make this fight as ugly as possible. But I'm saying that Islam stays undefeated, so we are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on into the prelims. We got Ateba, the Silent Assassin Gautier, 23 years old with a 7-1 record, taking on Robzilla Valentin, 30 years old with an 11-5-1 record. Now this is a fun fight between 2 UFC newcomers who love to strike and get finishes. Ateba is still so young and raw at only 23 years old, coming from the Contender Series, and Robert is an Ultimate Fighter alum who has struggled with grapplers, but has looked good against tall strikers, so I expect this to be a very high-paced and vicious showdown. Breaking this one down, Ateba is a Titan FC and Contender Series alum. He's on a 6-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC. 6 of his 7 wins are via knockout, and he has a 4-inch reach advantage. Now, Robert is an Ultimate Fighter alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is still looking for his first win in the UFC. 6 of his 10 wins are via submission. Now, Robert is a smart striker. He has more experience than Gautier, but Ateba has the power advantage. He's an athlete, man. I do think Ateba is going to be the one coming forward early, and Robert's going to have to make him pay when he closes distance. But I think Ateba is too much for Robert. If this does go into rounds 2 and 3, strap in. It will be a very interesting showdown. I've gone back and forth here, but I am taking Ateba Gautier, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. Moving on, we get a little bit of a bad blood matchup. We get Marvin, the Italian Dream Vittori, 31 years old with a 19-8-1 record and the number 10 next to his name, taking on Brendan All-In Allen, 29 years old with a 24-7 record and the number 11 next to his name. Now, I am very interested in this matchup as both men are in their primes and the time is now. You take a loss here, your hopes for fighting for a title are pretty dim, and you're in a much better place with the win. Both men are good grapplers, but Marvin hasn't really been using grappling, and he hasn't been grappling dependent, which may have cost him in some of the decisions. In his fight against Jared Cannonier, Jared actually had more takedowns, so I'm not sure if he's wanting to show off and really focus on his striking or what the deal is. But Brendan had an impressive run a few years ago, but he is really seeking a quality win and has been challenged at middleweight. And if you don't know about the Bad Blood, they were at a casino in Vegas for one of the pay-per-views, and you could see Brendan landing a punch on Marvin talking about his mom or something of that nature. But breaking it down, Marvin trains out of American Top Team. He has a black belt in BJJ, a brown belt, excuse me. He has the second most takedowns landed in a UFC middleweight division bout. He had 11 against Kevin Holland. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2023. And 9 of his 19 wins are via submission. Now, Brendan trains out of Killcliff FC. He has a black belt in BJJ. He has the second most submissions in UFC middleweight division history with 6. He's a Legacy FC, LFA former champion with 1 successful title defense and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, 4-2 since 2023, and 14 of his 24 wins are via submission. Now, I think whoever has more energy late in this fight is going to have a big advantage. Brendan's best win was a very close split decision victory over Chris Curtis back in April of 2024, where he relied heavily on his grappling, but it didn't help him in his fights against Nasruddin Imavov and Anthony Hernandez, where he was denied and outgrappled. When I think of striking, I feel like if Marvin is willing to adjust his game plan in the fight and not stick with the same combos like he did his last outing, he has the advantage. But Brendan definitely takes more chances. That does sometimes come back to haunt him. I don't think Brendan will easily be able to take Marvin down, and if he struggles, I'm not sure what his strategy will be. Brendan has slowed as fights gone on, even though he's young. That shouldn't happen in this 3-round fight, but I just have a feeling that Marvin is going to find a way by digging deep and outworking Allen. But Allen is more of a powerful striker and has more chances to get a finish if it gets on the canvas. But I'm taking Marvin Vettori as the underdog, the dog's coming to eat. But I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. Moving on in the prelim headliner. These are fantastic back-to-back bouts. We get Kyler the Matrix Phillips, 30 years old with a 12-3 record and the number 12 next to his name, taking on Vinicius Lockdog Oliveira, 29 years old with a 22-3 record and the number 15 next to his name. I'm really excited for this fight. This is kind of a fight of the night contender on this card full of stacked matchups. We get 2 men at the beginning of their primes who've really come onto the scene and are very well rounded. Kyler ran into a tough challenge with Rob Font, and Vinicius has really come onto the scene early in his UFC career with very quality wins against Said Nurmagomedov and Ricky Simone. Vinicius out-wrestled Said and outstruck Ricky Simone. That's pretty impressive. Kyler has some solid grappling speed and power, just like Lockdog, so expect 15 insane minutes with the fight going everywhere. Breaking this down, Kyler trains out of the MMA lab. He's an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 5 of his 12 wins are via knockout. Vinicius is a Future FC, UAE Warriors, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 5-fight winning streak, 4-0 in the UFC. 16 of his 22 wins are via knockout, and all 3 of his losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, I do think majority of this fight stays standing. Maybe some of there's some takedown attempts just for the sake of mixing things up by both men. Both men have quality wins and are pretty aggressive in their attacks. I think Vinicius will be the aggressor coming forward, and Kyler is going to be able to counter him with spinning techniques and kicks to keep him at distance. Oliveira has slowed later in fights as well, and I think that could be a big difference here in a close decision bout. But I'm taking another underdog. The dog's coming to eat. I'm taking Kyler Phillips, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays. The Brendan Allen, Marvin, Kyler, Vinicius fights, these are toss-ups. The winners, though, bright futures. Then in the main card in the pay-per-view, we have Daniel, the Golden Boy Zellhuber, 26 years old with a 15-2 record, taking on Michael the Menace Johnson, 39 years old with a 24-19 record. Now, this is a fun, striking showdown to kick off the pay-per-view. Both men are in different positions in their careers, but Daniel gets a household name after the Fight of the Year contender last year against Esteban Rabovics at the Sphere. I saw that in person. That shit made that event. Now, Michael is in a resurgence with some quality wins of late, but will have his hands full versus the young, confident, and skilled Zellhuber. Breaking this down, Daniel has a wrestling style. He trains out of Extreme Couture. All three of his last fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He had the 2024 Fight of the Year against Esteban Rabovics. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 3-1 since 2023. 7 of his 15 wins are via knockout, and he's going to have a 3.5-inch reach advantage and a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Michael has a southpaw stance. He has a purple belt in BJJ. He has a JUCO wrestling background at Merrimack Community College. He has the second most knockdowns in UFC lightweight division history with 11. He had the 2017 Fight of the Year against Justin Gaethje. He's a Titan FC and TUF alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 1-2 since 2023. Both of these guys have Fight of the Years for a reason, and I expect a fun showdown. I do think Michael is going to make things interesting in this fight with his aggression and boxing ability. Plus, he's coming off a second-round finish in his last fight. He's got to have some confidence. Daniel has fought to a lot of decisions in the UFC, but it's definitely not from a lack of volume. I do think the volume that Daniel brings and his durability with being so young and so long in this fight, that'll be the biggest difference. Michael's best shot is to get a finish, and Daniel has never been finished in his pro career. For that reason, I'm taking Daniel Zellhuber. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, we get Dan, 50K Ige, 33 years old with a 19-9 record and the number 12 next to his name, taking on Patricio Pitbull, 38 years old with a 36-8 record. Now, Patricio had a rough start to his UFC career with a short notice bout and looks to try to correct it versus a featherweight mainstay in Dan Ige. You know, Dan has been fighting at the top of the division since 2021 and is now in the middle of his prime. Dan has been able to strike with anyone, but has been defeated when taken down multiple times. Patricio's striking is very aggressive and powerful, especially early in the fight. But I think Dan has great striking defense and boxing skills to take it to Patricio, unless he gets an early knockout or continually take Ige down, and Dan has never been knocked out. Breaking this fight down, Dan trains out of Extreme Couture. He has a brown belt in Judo, a black belt in BJJ. He has a D3 wrestling background out of Wartburg. He's an RFA, Legacy FC, Titan FC, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 4-3 since 2023. 7 of his 19 wins are via knockout, 5 via submission, so 12 of his 19 wins via finish. And he does have a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, Patricio has a black belt in BJJ. A lot of the guys left on this fucking card, they got accolades. He's a former Bellator lightweight and featherweight world champion. He has 9 overall title defenses in 3 separate reigns. He's the second simultaneous 2-weight champion in Bellator MMA history. He's the first fighter in Bellator history to have 4 separate championship reigns. He has the most wins in Bellator history with 24. The most wins in Bellator featherweight at 23. The most wins in Bellator title fights at 15. That's insane. The most title fights in Bellator history with 18. The most fights in Bellator history with 30. The most fights in Bellator featherweight at 28. The most finishes in Bellator history at 15. He's tied with AJ McKee for most finishes in Bellator featherweight history with 13. He has the most knockouts in Bellator featherweight history with 8. He's an Eagle FC and Bellator alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 1-3 since 2023. 12 of his 36 wins are via knockout, 12 via submission, so 24 of his 36 wins via finish. But this fight is going to be a bar fight. It's going to be high-paced fun. I could see Patricio being overzealous and giving Dan opportunities for a knockout or potentially even a submission victory. Patricio may mix in grappling, he can do so, but he hasn't shown that he's willing to do that. But Dan's too talented. He's the best version of himself today. For that reason, I'm taking Dan, 50K Ige. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We get Kevin Trailblazer Holland, 32 years old with a 28-13-1 record and the number 14 next to his name, taking on Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez, 38 years old with a 19-5 record. Now, this fight was supposed to happen back at UFC 279, but with a bunch of chaos, Kevin was booked at a catchweight against Khamzat Chimaev, and D-Rod had a catchweight against Li Jingliang. I like the fight more if it happened a couple years ago in 2022, because Daniel's getting older and he's coming up on 39 years old. And Kevin is in the middle of his prime and seems to finally be taking things more seriously, and he's finally committed to welterweight, which is really the only move for him in the UFC, in my opinion. After the RDR and Dolidze fights, where he was finished in the first round, I said I'm never picking Kevin Holland again until he proves me right. Well, now after back-to-back welterweight wins this year alone against Gunnar Nelson and Vicente Luque, I feel more confident in him more than ever. How quickly things can change. But breaking this down, Kevin has an orthodox stance. He has a second-degree black belt in Kung Fu, a black belt in BJJ. 3 of his last 5 fights have been performance of the night. He shows up, he shows out. He has the second most performance of the night bonuses in UFC history with 9, behind Charles Oliveira. He's tied with Roger Huerta and Neil Magny for most wins in a calendar year in UFC history with 5. He's tied with Tony Ferguson for second most Darce Bravo choke submission wins in UFC history with 3, behind Vicente Luque, which is ironic because he just finished Vicente Luque with 1. He has the most wins in a calendar year in UFC middleweight history with 5. He has the most bouts in a 12-month period in UFC history with 7. He was the 2020 Male Fighter of the Year. He's a Legacy FC, King of the Cage, LFA, Bellator, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 5-4 since 2023. 14 of his 28 wins are via knockout, 9 via submission, so 23 of his 28 wins via finish. 4 of his 13 losses are via submission, and he has a 7-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, Daniel has a southpaw stance. He trains out of Syndicate MMA. He's got a purple belt in BJJ. He's a King of the Cage, Bellator, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 2-2 since 2023. 9 of his 19 wins are via knockout. Now, Daniel's going to bring his high guard and his tight boxing. He's got good combinations, maybe even bring some kicks to deal with the length of Holland. You never know what Kevin's game plan is going to be, but I expect him to be aggressive as a quicker striker, throw out a lot of volume, pretty much from everywhere, kicks included, spinning techniques, and maybe even some sweeps. Daniel was too slow and struggled against a lengthy Ian Gary a few years back, and I expect much of the same result in this fight. For that reason, I'm taking Kevin Holland. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Now moving on to the co-main event. I am hyped for these last two fights. We get Paulo Borrachinha Costa, 34 years old with a 14-4 record and the number 13 next to his name, taking on Roman Kopylov, 34 years old with a 14-3 record and the number 14 next to his name. Now, Paulo has had an interesting 4 years after losing the title fight to Israel Adesanya, pretty much by domination. And he dropped a decision to Marvin Vettori at light heavyweight, and only has fought once a year, and he missed 2023 due to contract issues and random promotion disputes from what it seems. He seems to be where he needs to be now, but last year dropped 2 fights against very good fighters, a very close fight to Sean Strickland, and a hard-fought battle against Robert Whittaker, but he showcased his potential in those losses. He's grown a lot. He's been training in new gyms to try to level up. He's going to need his A game in this fight because Kopylov is a silent assassin with his kickboxing. He's recently added grappling to his arsenal as well. This one is going to be one hell of a fight with a ton on the line as both men are still in their primes and want to be fighting in the top 15 of the middleweight division. Breaking this down, Paulo has a black belt in BJJ. He has the second most significant strikes landed per minute in UFC middleweight division history at 6.15. He had a 2019 Fight of the Year nominee against Yoel Romero. I bring that up because it was deserving of Fight of the Year. Shit was a banger. He's an Ultimate Fighter Brazil alum and Jungle Fight alum and former champion with 1 successful title defense. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2022. And 11 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Now, Roman has a southpaw style. He's a Fight Nights Global alum and former champion with 1 successful title defense. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 5-1 since 2023. 12 of his 14 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 3 losses are via submission. But he does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, Roman has been a knockout machine since coming to the UFC from a very good Fight Nights Global promotion. 5 of his 6 wins in the UFC are via knockout. I think that in a 3-round fight, it's going to be the man that is pressuring forward, and I expect Paulo to be that guy early. But as the fight goes on, Roman is sneaky. He may even look to take Paulo down, knowing that's been a weakness of his. Chris Curtis was actually leading the dance against Roman until he got finished back in January. Both men like to leverage kicks. They have a similar style in combos, but Paulo has more power, while Roman is a little bit more crisp and technical. Roman has been very active and has leveled up over the course of his UFC tenure. He's full of confidence, while Paulo's back is against the wall. You lose this and you're pretty much in purgatory. That's why I think he's been taking things so seriously, and we will see the best version of the Eraser. This is going to be a barn burner. This is my leader for Fight of the Night, and I can't fucking wait. I'm taking the underdog. The dog's coming to eat. I'm taking Paulo Costa, but I'm avoiding this on any parlay. This is the main event. Nobody knows it's going to happen. It's going to be tight. Speaking of the main event, there is not more than 5, maybe 7 fights the UFC could book today that will deliver the kind of quality this fight will. We get Max Blessed Holloway, 33 years old with a 26-8 record and the number 5 next to his name, taking on Dustin the Diamond Poirier, 36 years old with a 39-1 record and the number 6 next to his name. Man, not only is this certified box office by two of the best to ever do it in the UFC, but they also have some of the biggest fan bases and following in all of the UFC roster. They are both two of my top 5 favorite UFC fighters of all time. I hate that someone has to lose, but there is a lot of history between these men, and it's almost like a movie. You know, Max Holloway started his UFC career against Dustin and was dominated as he was so young and inexperienced. Fast forward 7 years later, and Dustin put it on Max as Max moved up to the light heavyweight class after his second title defense 4 months prior, and he didn't take the time to put on the weight and strength needed to move up divisions, and that was very evident early in that 5-round fight. Dustin almost finished Max, but the Bless Express was like Rocky and started turning the tables with his volume and cardio, but it wasn't enough in that fight as DP won the interim lightweight title and ended Max's insane 13-fight winning streak. Now, Max has had more time in preparation. He's took on a good amount of time to add the weight properly. We saw what that did for him in the Justin Gaethje fight for the BMF, and boy did it pay off. He was hitting harder, he was more of a force, and dominated one of the hardest hitters in the UFC lightweight history, which is one of the hardest hitting divisions in the UFC. Max lost to Ilia Topuria at 145 back in October, and he pretty much has had realistically 9 months to prepare to be a full-time lightweight fighter. He's not going back to featherweight. The storylines are endless in this fight. I get chills thinking about this fight, and how people can say this card is trash, again, mind-blowing. Breaking it down, it's going to take a minute. These guys are two of the greatest to ever do it. Max has a brown belt in BJJ. He's the former featherweight champion with 3 successful title defenses. He has the most finishes and most knockouts in UFC featherweight title fights with 4. He was an interim featherweight champion. He has the highest significant strike differential in UFC championship history at plus 180 significant strikes against Brian Ortega. He's the first American to win the UFC featherweight championship. He's the current BMF champion. 4 of his last 7 fights have been fight of the night. Not performance of the night, but fight of the night. He shows up, he shows out. The best is blessed. He has the second most post-fight bonuses in UFC featherweight history with 10, behind Cub Swanson. He has the longest winning streak in UFC featherweight division history with 13, the most wins in featherweight history with 20. He's tied with Cub Swanson for most wins in UFC WEC featherweight history with 20. He has the most knockouts in UFC featherweight division history with 9. He has the most finishes in UFC featherweight history with 11. He's tied with Jose Aldo for most finishes in UFC WEC featherweight history with 11. He has the second most bouts in UFC featherweight history, 27, behind Darren Elkins. He has the most significant strikes landed in UFC history at 3,457, and in featherweight history at 2,971. He has the most total strikes landed in UFC history, 3,706. Also the most at featherweight, 3,180. He has the most total fight time in UFC featherweight history, 6 hours, 58 minutes, and 57 seconds. I mean, this resume is insane. He has the second most total fight time in UFC history, 8 hours, 2 minutes, and 43 seconds. He has the second most decision wins in UFC featherweight history with 9. The most significant strikes absorbed in UFC history at 2,298. He has the most consecutive bouts without being knocked down in UFC history at 29. He has the most bouts with 100 or more significant strikes per fight in UFC history at 16. He's tied with Demetrius Johnson and Yair Rodriguez for the latest finish in UFC history, 4 minutes and 59 seconds in round 5 against Justin Gaethje, which was also the latest finish in lightweight history. He has the most significant strikes landed in a fight in UFC history, 445 against Calvin Kattar. He has the highest striking differential in a fight in UFC history at plus 312 against Kattar. The most significant strikes attempted in UFC history, 744 against Kattar. The most significant strikes attempted in lightweight history, 446 against Dustin Poirier in their second fight. And he has the most significant strikes attempted at featherweight, 744 against Calvin Kattar. He has the most distance strikes landed in a fight in UFC history, 439 against Kattar. The most significant head strikes landed in a UFC history and featherweight history, 274 against Kattar. He has the most significant body strikes landed in a fight in UFC history, 117 against Kattar. The most in lightweight history, 62 against Gaethje. And in featherweight history, the 117 against Kattar. He has the most total strikes landed in a fight in UFC history and featherweight history at 447 against Kattar. The most total strikes attempted in a fight in UFC history, 746 against Kattar. The most total strikes attempted in a title fight, 407 against Brian Ortega. The most in a lightweight fight, 473 in the second Poirier fight. Also in featherweight, 746 against Kattar. He has the most total head strikes landed in UFC featherweight history, 274 against Calvin Kattar. Most leg kicks landed in a fight in lightweight history, 57 against Gaethje. The most total body strikes landed in a UFC fight in UFC history, 119 against Kattar. He has the most significant strikes landed in a round in UFC history and featherweight history, 141 in round 5 against Kattar. And we're still going. He has the most significant strikes attempted in a round in UFC featherweight division history, 204 in round 3 against Jose Aldo in their second fight. He has the most total strikes landed in a round in UFC featherweight history, 141 in round 4 against Brian Ortega. He has the most total strikes attempted in a round in UFC featherweight history, 212 in round 3 against Jose Aldo in their second fight. He holds wins over 6 former UFC champions, 4 of them undisputed, 2 interim. Charles Oliveira, Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo 2 times, Frankie Edgar, Yair Rodriguez, and Justin Gaethje. He's the 2017 Fighter of the Year. He had last year's 2024 Knockout and Fight of the Year against Justin Gaethje. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 3-1 since 2023, and 12 of his 26 wins are via knockout. Now, Dustin has a southpaw stance. He trains out of American Top Team. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's the former UFC interim lightweight champion. He's a champion in my eyes. Probably had to face the toughest champions in UFC history. 3 of his last 4 fights have been fight of the night. No performance of the night. Fucking fight of the night. He shows up. He shows out. He's tied with Edson Barboza for most fight of the night bonuses in UFC history with 10. He's tied with John Jones, GSP, and Amanda Nunes for most finishes against current, future, and former UFC champions with 6. He's tied with Drew Dober for most knockouts in UFC lightweight division history with 9. He holds wins over 5 former UFC champions. Max Holloway 2 times, Conor McGregor 2 times, Eddie Alvarez, Anthony Pettis, and Justin Gaethje. As we continue to look at his accolades, I think both of these men have pound for pound the best resume roster of victories and fights in the UFC. So let's break down Dustin. When he came from the WEC, he only had 2 fights. He had 3 fights of people that I'm not aware of. But then it was Max Holloway, submission of the night. The Korean Zombie, Cub Swanson, Conor McGregor, Carlos Diego Fajeda, Yancy Medeiros, Joseph Duffy, Bobby Green, Michael Johnson, Jim Miller, Eddie Alvarez, Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, Max Holloway, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Dan Hooker, Conor McGregor, Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje, Benoit Saint-Denis, and Islam Makhachev. Since 2016, he's been fighting A-list fighters, a lot of them repetitively because he cleaned out his division. This is one bad man. He's the only fighter in the UFC, the only fighter to win the UFC interim belt, defeating a current UFC undisputed champion, which is when he beat Max Holloway. He had the 2018 Fight of the Year against Justin Gaethje, the 2012 Fight of the Year against Chan Sung Jung. He's a WEC alum. He's on a one-fight losing streak. He's 1-2 since 2023. 15 of his 30 wins are via knockout, 8 via submission, so 23 of his 30 wins via finish. 4 of his 9 losses are via submission. 3 of them in his title fights against Khabib, Islam, and Charles Oliveira. But he does have a 3-inch reach advantage. You don't, I don't, none of us really know how this fight's going to play out much differently than it did 6 years ago, as Dustin is still fighting at a very high level, but I just have a feeling Max is going to put a stamp on this one via decision with his volume. He's going to have to be better defensively than in their last matchup, but I think his added size and strength and being in the middle of his prime will really help. In the face-offs on Embedded this week, he talked about how Max really looks like a lightweight and how thick he's gotten, so he's noticed as well. Now, both men have been knocked out since the last fight 6 years ago, but they were against killers. I don't expect them to get a finish via knockout, but if Dustin Poirier looks to grapple, I could see a potential submission opportunity, and of course he might have to chase the Gilly gang to retire. But Dustin had his adversities in his fights against Benoit Saint-Denis and Michael Chandler. And since then, they both don't really seem as good as we once thought they were. And Justin Gaethje got an early finish on a head kick with him in Salt Lake City. I got to see that in person. I wish we saw more rounds and some more action. But Max has had to fend off some serious young talent, the likes of Yair Rodriguez and Arnold Allen, let alone move up to the lightweight division and knock out Justin Gaethje in a fight he completely dominated from start to finish. If Dustin gets the win, I see it being an early finish, and we haven't seen anyone do that to Max. What a crazy way to end this trilogy and the Diamond's career. I'm here for it, and I just wish one of these guys didn't have to lose. But for the sake of picking, I'm taking Max Holloway, but I am not putting that on any parlays where possible. New Orleans, you got to show. You get the fucking Gaethje or the Max Holloway Diamond retirement fight. Borrachinha and Roman Kopylov guaranteed violence. Kevin Holland's always a show. Ige and Patricio Pitbull will be sure to deliver. A striking battle in Daniel Zellhuber and Michael Johnson. 2 guys looking to make waves in the bantamweight division. Kyler Phillips and Vinicius Oliveira. Brendan Allen and Marvin Vettori in Bad Blood. And plenty more good young talent, including Atiba Gautier and Robert Valentin. I can't wait for this card. I can't wait to break it down. But next week, we have some more early overseas action. It's a return to Yaz Island and a very fun fight night card headlined by Robert Whitaker and Rainier de Ritter. That's episode 107. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.